My name is Carol Peterson, and I'm 68 years old. For as long as I can remember, my life has been about making sure the people I love are safe, cared for, and supported. I spent decades working long shifts as a nurse in Charleston, South Carolina, often coming home exhausted, but with the satisfaction that my son, Michael, never went without. I thought I knew every kind of stress and heartbreak a person could face. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the betrayal that would hit me in my own living room one ordinary morning. The week before, our home security cameras had been out of service. After weeks of feeling uneasy, a technician finally came and fixed them, setting up an app on my phone so I could check the house in real time. I hadn't really thought much of it, just a convenience. But the next morning, when Michael and his wife Vanessa told me they were heading out, I felt a quiet nudge, a curiosity to test the cameras. What I saw froze me in place. There they were, sitting in my living room, my private papers spread across the coffee table like they owned the place. I leaned closer, trying to convince myself it was some mistake, some innocent glance at old bills. But Vanessa's voice pierced the quiet, not asking, but commanding, searching for something very specific. Michael's words followed, casual and almost clinical, like he was dissecting a problem rather than talking about his mother. It was then I understood they weren't just snooping. They were plotting to erase me from my own home. The shock washed over me in waves. How could the boy I had raised, the little boy who once called me his hero, be sitting there talking about my life as if it were just an obstacle in their way? My chest tightened. A slow, simmering fear began to turn into determination. I realized in that instant that if I wanted to protect myself, I had to act, and quietly, without letting them know I had already seen everything. As I watched them, a strange clarity settled over me. I could remember every late night, every sacrificed weekend, every moment I had worked to build a home and a life for us. And yet, here I was, witnessing those same sacrifices being treated as weaknesses. I took a deep breath and told myself I would not let their ambition destroy me. I needed to be smart, patient, and observant, and maybe, just maybe, I could turn the tables in a way they would never see coming. It was terrifying. Yes, but in that fear, I felt the first stirrings of a plan, a quiet promise to myself no one would take what was rightfully mine, not my home, not my dignity, not my peace. And as I set my phone down, I knew the journey to protect myself was just beginning, and the story I would live through in the coming days would change everything. When I think back to the beginning, to the years when it was just Michael and me, I still feel that mix of exhaustion and pride that carried me through. His father walked out when Michael was only 5. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. I remember standing in the kitchen that night, staring at the bills piled on the counter, wondering how in the world I was going to keep a roof over our heads. So I did what mothers do. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Nights bled into mornings. Weekends disappeared into long days under fluorescent lights. But every hour meant stability for Michael. I promised myself he would never feel the emptiness of going without. Our little house became more than just walls. It was the center of our world, the place where scraped knees were patched up on the kitchen floor, and birthdays were celebrated with store-bought cakes that somehow always felt special. I can still picture him hugging me tight after blowing out the candles, whispering that I was his hero. Those moments were my fuel. Over the years, men came and went, and chances at love passed me by. I chose Michael instead. I thought if I gave him everything, my time, my attention, my sacrifices, he would grow into a man who valued honesty and loyalty. That was the dream I held on to during all those double shifts. When Michael finally married, I wanted to believe Vanessa was the partner who would stand by him. At first, she was charming, all polite smiles and warm laughter. I welcomed her as a daughter, maybe even too eagerly. So when they said they wanted to move in with me to help as I got older, I believed it was love, not calculation. I was 68, retired, and beginning to feel the weight of the years on my shoulders. Having them close seemed comforting. I thought we'd share meals, maybe rediscover the kind of closeness I'd been missing. But little by little, the atmosphere shifted. Vanessa began managing the household finances, saying she could do it better. Michael, my once affectionate son, grew distant. Impatience crept into his voice when I asked simple questions. Out of my modest pension, I gave them $700 each month. I thought of it as peace money, my way of helping them breathe easier. But I overheard them once, brushing it off as crumbs. That word stayed with me, sharp and bitter. Crumbs. Even then, I brushed away the discomfort. Mothers tell themselves stories. Maybe they're just tired, maybe stressed, maybe it will pass. I excused their sharpness, convincing myself it was normal for a young couple finding their way. I wanted harmony more than I wanted answers. Looking back, I see how blind I was. The signs were there, etched into their tone, their habits, their impatience. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but the very love and sacrifice I had poured into Michael had started to be twisted into something else. I was no longer the mother who had given him everything. I was becoming an obstacle. And though I didn't fully realize it then, that was the beginning of the unraveling, the slow shift from family to threat, from loved one to liability. Living with Michael and Vanessa should have brought me comfort. Instead, it felt like my home was slowly being rearranged around me, piece by piece. At first, it was small things, Vanessa insisting she could handle the bills better than I could, telling me she had systems that would make things easier. I wanted to believe she meant well, so I handed things over, thinking maybe I was being old-fashioned. But then I noticed the way Michael changed. My son, the boy who once clung to me after nightmares, now looked at me with impatience, as though my questions were interruptions. If I asked about something as simple as a charge on the credit card, his face would tighten. He spoke to me like a burden. The more I tried to brush it off, the more the truth pressed against me. I was no longer seen as the mother who had sacrificed everything. I was a responsibility to manage, an obstacle in the way of their future. The allowance I gave them, $700 each month, was supposed to be my gesture of goodwill, my way of helping them find balance. But one evening, as I passed the hallway, I heard them dismiss it as nothing more than crumbs. That word stung deeper than they knew. My generosity, carved from years of hard work, had been reduced to scraps in their eyes. I told myself not to dwell on it. Mothers are good at making excuses. I thought maybe they were stressed. Maybe I was imagining more than was there. But soon, the signs became too sharp to ignore. One morning, sipping my tea at the kitchen table, I checked the camera app again, expecting to see an empty living room. Instead, there was Michael, pacing, rifling through the carefully stacked folders I had kept for decades. Vanessa sat calmly on the couch, leafing through my documents like she was browsing a magazine. My heart sank as I listened. They weren't just curious, they were searching. They were looking for the deed to my house, That moment shattered any lingering illusions. I heard Vanessa's voice, steady and cold, talking about the value of the house, about how much it could sell for. She spoke as if I were already gone, like my final years could be spent in a one-bedroom apartment tucked away somewhere. And Michael, my Michael, spoke of me like I was fragile, confused, easy to trick. They believed they could present me with papers, disguise them as something harmless, and I would sign without realizing. The betrayal cut deep. To know that my age, my occasional forgetfulness about where I left my glasses or what day it was, had become ammunition for them, it broke something inside me. I realized then that they were building a story, a version of me that was incompetent, paranoid, unstable, and to the outside world, who would people believe, the devoted son and daughter-in-law, or the aging mother accused of confusion? I tried to steady my breathing, reminding myself that I had spent my life staying calm under pressure. Nurses learn to carry the weight of chaos and keep moving. Mothers learn to endure more than anyone can imagine. I knew I had to summon both. In the quiet of that kitchen, my grief slowly transformed into resolve. If they wanted to push me into a corner, I would not crumble. I would watch. I would listen, and I would wait. They thought I was blind, but I had already seen the truth, and deep inside, a plan began to take shape. I wouldn't fight their lies head-on, not yet. I would let them think they had control. But from that moment forward, I was no longer the vulnerable woman they believed me to be. I had become an observer in my own home, and every whisper, every scheme, every slip of their tongue would become evidence. What they didn't realize was that their arrogance had given me the one thing I needed most time, and I intended to use it. After that morning with the cameras, I knew pretending to be unaware was my only shield. Outwardly, I played the same role, soft-spoken, agreeable, asking about their plans, smiling when they kissed my cheek. Inside, though, I had shifted completely. I had become a witness, quietly collecting details they thought I would never notice. At night, I sat in my bedroom with the glow of my phone lighting the darkness, watching them whisper when they thought I was asleep. I wrote down dates and times in a small notebook I kept hidden under the mattress. I memorized their phrases, the way they spoke about deadlines, about Anthony, the man they had brought into their scheme. Every word became a piece of evidence in my mind. Still, I knew that if they painted me as unstable, I needed to prove otherwise before their lies reached too far. That's when I called Dr. Harris, my longtime physician. I told her calmly that my son and daughter-in-law were trying to claim I was confused and paranoid, but that I needed her to see me for herself. Sitting in that office, I was nervous, but also determined. The tests came: memory, reasoning, orientation, and I answered each one clearly, with a focus sharper than I'd felt in years. When she finished, she told me I had one of the sharpest minds she'd seen for my age. She documented it all, creating a record that would stand against any false story they might try to spin. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. Their whispers couldn't change the truth written in black and white by a professional who knew me. That report became armor around my heart. But I also knew a piece of paper would not be enough. If I wanted to protect myself, I needed undeniable proof, something that captured their intentions in their own voices. That's when Dr. Harris referred me to a private investigator, Richard Lawson. He listened to my story with a calm patience that made me feel less alone. He explained that what I was experiencing had a name: financial elder abuse. It was more common than I realized, but that didn't make it any less painful to admit. Richard offered me a plan. Together, with a technician, he installed small cameras hidden in my living and dining rooms. He gave me a tiny microphone, no larger than a button, that could be clipped inside my blouse. All I had to do was continue my act, play the confused, trusting mother they believed me to be, and let them reveal themselves. The thought terrified me. My heart raced at the idea of sitting at the same table with them, pretending to trust, while secretly recording every word. But at the same time, I felt a spark of empowerment. If they thought I was weak, I could use that against them. I remember standing in front of the mirror the first morning I wore that hidden microphone. My hands trembled as I adjusted it, but when I looked into my own eyes, I felt a quiet strength. I whispered to myself that I was not just defending my house. I was defending my dignity, my years of sacrifice, my very identity as a mother who had given everything. From that day forward, the house became a stage. They believed they were tightening the noose, pushing me closer to surrender. But what they didn't know was that I had already cut the rope. Each conversation they pressed on me, each paper they slid across the table, was being recorded. I played along, nodding gently, feigning confusion when needed, letting them believe they were in control. The truth was, the trap had already been set, and every moment that passed brought us closer to the day they would walk straight into it. The day of the confrontation felt ordinary to anyone looking in from the outside. Sunlight poured through the dining room window, and the air carried that quiet stillness of late morning. But for me, every second was heavy, every breath deliberate. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and I knew there would be no turning back once it began. I had told Michael and Vanessa that I was finally ready to review the documents they kept pressing on me. Their eyes lit up, almost glowing with relief and excitement. They believed their persistence had worn me down. Inside, my nerves rattled like loose glass, but on the outside, I let my voice stay calm, steady, even eager. The table was covered with papers, neatly arranged by Vanessa, as though she were presenting a gift rather than a trap of her own making. Michael's hands shook slightly as he placed a pen beside them. He tried to mask his restlessness with a gentle smile, but I had raised him. I knew the difference between calm and forced calm. I adjusted my blouse as I sat down, my fingers brushing against the hidden microphone clipped beneath the fabric. The cameras Richard had placed were already rolling, capturing every angle. I told myself to breathe slowly, to lean into the role of the woman they thought I was: confused, overwhelmed, too trusting. As they guided me through the pages, explaining clauses in vague, reassuring tones, I let them talk. I pretended to squint at the fine print, tilting my head as though I was struggling to follow along. Inside, though, I understood every word. The language was clear enough once signed. These papers would strip me of authority over my own home and hand it directly to them. I asked small, innocent-sounding questions, the kind they expected from someone unsure. Their impatience slipped through. I could hear it in Michael's sighs, see it in the tightness of Vanessa's jaw. Each time they reassured me, each time they brushed away my concerns, the microphone caught their words in crisp detail. Then came the moment when the mask slipped entirely. Vanessa leaned forward, her tone no longer sugar-coated, and she spoke openly about what would happen once the house was in their name. She described selling it, moving me into something smaller, something more appropriate for my final years. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to remain composed. Michael, emboldened by her confidence, finally said aloud what he had been holding back, that they deserved the money, that they had lived too long on my crumbs, and that it was their right to claim the house now. Hearing those words from my son nearly broke me, but at the same time, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the proof I had been waiting for. Their greed, their entitlement, their betrayal, all of it captured and recorded. I set the pen down slowly, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. I looked at Michael, really looked at him, and I knew I had lost him long before this day. But I also knew I had saved myself. And then, just as planned, the front door opened. Richard entered with 2 uniformed officers and my attorney at his side. The weight of the moment pressed down on all of us. Michael froze, his face pale with shock. Vanessa's expression twisted, a mixture of rage and disbelief. They realized too late that the trap they thought they had set for me had already closed around them. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely. The power had shifted, and the truth was no longer mine alone to carry. When the officers led Michael and Vanessa out of my house, the silence they left behind felt heavier than the noise of their betrayal ever had. For months, I had lived with whispers in the dark, with the constant fear that everything I built could be taken from me. Now, for the first time in a long while, the walls of my home held peace again. The legal process was not easy, but it was necessary. My attorney worked quickly, and eventually Michael and Vanessa surrendered any claim to my property. They were given a reduced sentence, 18 months in prison, shorter than what they could have faced, but long enough for me to know that justice had been served. Neighbors asked me later if I regretted it. After all, Michael is my only son. The question stung, but my answer was simple. I didn't regret being his mother, but I did regret not realizing sooner that motherhood doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity. Love is not meant to be used as leverage. Trust is not meant to be twisted into weakness. I have always believed that family is built on honesty, respect, and care. Blood may connect us, but it is character that defines who truly stands beside us. Losing Michael in this way was painful, but I had already lost him the moment he decided my life was worth less than money on a piece of paper. Now, I live quietly in my house. I tend my garden, share meals with neighbors who feel more like family than those bound to me by name. I laugh again, sometimes over something as simple as the sight of a new bloom in the yard or the warmth of fresh bread from the oven. These small joys are treasures that no one can steal. When I sit in my armchair, the same chair where I once held Michael as a frightened child, I no longer feel the ache of betrayal. Instead, I feel strength. Strength in knowing I faced a storm I never expected and came out whole. Strength in realizing that even in my 60s, I could stand tall, fight back, and protect what mattered most. Sometimes, protecting your peace means letting go of the people you thought you loved the most. And while that truth still cuts deep, it also frees me to live the years ahead with dignity and calm. Looking back, I realize this story was never just about a house. It was about dignity. It was about learning that love, no matter how deep, cannot excuse betrayal. I gave my son every ounce of myself. But in the end, I had to accept that protecting my peace meant drawing a line even against family. I share this not because it's easy, but because I know I'm not the only one. Some of you may have faced betrayal in your own homes. Maybe not about money or property, but about respect, about being seen and valued. If that's you, I want you to know you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your worth does not vanish just because someone else refuses to see it. I've learned that true family is defined not by blood, but by respect, honesty, and love freely given. And sometimes, letting go is the most powerful way to protect yourself. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength. Leave a comment and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. And if you want more stories like mine, please like this video and subscribe. Because in sharing, we remind each other dignity is worth protecting, no matter the cost.